सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Good evening and good morning, depending upon from where you are dialing in. So welcome to the third session of chapter 4. Again, as we highlighted in the beginning of this season, now onwards, clarity is very important. So if you have any questions, let's discuss at 9:30. And if there is any further discussions required, please post that in the WhatsApp group or send me a message. Since we studied the first 3 chapters and getting into the 4th chapter, the clarity is very important. So I just wanted to make sure that if there is anything you don't understand, please feel free to ask. At least I can try to answer that. Means I cannot guarantee that I can answer everything, but at least I can try to answer everything. So in our first 2 sessions, the first session we had a quick introduction of chapter 1, 2, and 3. And last week we covered in fact 2 verses and an introduction of the chapter 4. We quickly reviewed the structure of the chapter 4, and we were talking about the Vamsha Kathanam, or the teaching lineage, because Lord Krishna introduced the fact that this yoga which I taught you, which is the integrated view of the yoga, not just the karma yoga alone, the integrated view of the yoga, it is not something new. It was just an intelligent reinterpretation of the original teaching. And this teaching was given to me, to Lord Son, at the beginning of the manifestation of this universe. So if you really think about that particular verse, we detached ourselves from the religious language and we try to use a scientific viewpoint and try to understand that, what exactly it means. So we covered up to that. And in the second verse, Krishna said that even though this knowledge was imparted to Lord Son, or this knowledge was there from time and memorial, and this was faithfully handed down from teaching tradition to teaching tradition, through a process called sampradaya, means we explained what is sampradaya. Pradaya means give, daya means give. Sampradaya means you give it in such a way that you ensure the other person is getting it. That is what the teaching methodology is. But what happens is in between, when the time lapses, as the time goes by, we used 2 words from Shankaracharya, Durbalan, Ajitendriyan, like some weak and teachers who do not have control over the sensory system, over the mind. Such people, when they became the main teachers, this teaching gets diluted, and over a period of time, it deviates and declines. So that's where we ended up, or that's exactly a quick recap of what we covered. So this teaching got corrupted eventually over the time when it falls into the hands of the incompetent teachers. And time to time it happens, and a correction needs to be applied. So this is what we saw in the previous 2 classes, and now we can continue. So let's go to the next verse. So verse 3. So Anu, could you please chant the verse 3?
Yes. Sa evayam maya tetya yogah proktah puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam shyetaduttamam.
So Krishna just wanted to reiterate the fact that the teaching which was given to Lord Son, meaning the original teaching of the Gita or the yoga, the uncorrupted teaching of the yoga. Whatever I taught is only that. I'm only reinterpreting that teaching with proper context. The same ancient knowledge, whatever I gave as Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, is only an intelligent reinterpretation of that original Vedic teaching. So he tells, Sa evayam maya tepyaha yogaha proktaha puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hedaduttamam. This is the verse. So let's see. There are two sentences here. So he tells, today means this day. This day I am teaching you, because he is talking to Arjuna. He tells today, that very same yoga, sa eva I am. So that very same yoga, which was there in the past, ancient yoga, Puratana Yoga. So that very same yoga which was taught at the beginning of the manifestation of this universe, that uncorrupted yoga, original yoga, proktaha, being taught or being told, te, to you. So I am teaching you that very same original yoga. Whatever, I may use a different language, but the content wise, it's exactly the same. So maya, by me, iti, because, and asi, you are. Why I am teaching you? Because you are a bhakta, cha, and sakha. You are a devotee as well as a friend. So in other words, Krishna is saying that original teaching which was there in the past, which was there in the Vedas, which was there handed down from a teaching tradition, I am teaching that same yoga to you now. So when you might have thought that the karma yoga I explained earlier, it's a Krishna theory. Definitely it is not a Krishna theory. It is the same old teaching. It's only an intelligent reinterpretation of the original teaching. And in the second sentence he tells, etat, meaning this, he indeed, uttamam rahasyam, this is a profound secret. We are going to see what exactly each one of this. So we'll try to understand. So in other words, as a combined meaning, he tells the very same yoga, which I taught you today, is the original yoga. And I'm teaching it to you because you are my devotee and you are a good friend of mine. And this teaching is indeed not easily comprehensible knowledge. So let's start with that. It is said that this yoga is uttamam rahasyam. Rahasyam means what? Literal meaning? Secret. So what does that mean? This teaching of the Gita or the original Vedic teaching, is that a secret? Some people literally took that. And as a result, they kept it with themselves. That's not what Krishna meant here. Shankaracharya brilliantly explains. What is a secret? What is the greatest secret?
Very important.
Yeah, something people don't know, right? You keep it as a secret. You keep it hidden. But here the problem is, you are talking about the nature of yourself. The greatest secret is something that won't be revealed even if you talk about that. Think through that. The great secret means something that is hidden, that something that is kept hidden, or something that remains as hidden. That is the secret, right? So here, the knowledge about the self, even though the rishis are talking about Tattvamasi, even though people are telling that the happiness is within me, even though people are hearing with a wonder, even though people are talking about this as a wonder, even though we are studying this as a wonder, nobody gets that easily. So even if you tell that, even if you readily tell that to everybody, it remains as a secret. That's what Shankaracharya interprets this. It's not that it should not be given to anybody. It should be given to anybody and everybody. But the problem is that even if you give that to somebody, it's not easy to comprehend. That's why it is called Uttamam Rahasyam. This is a profound secret. The reason is, in spite of multiple masters telling this, in spite of you reading about this, in spite of you listening Gita 100 times, still it remains as a secret. Krishna calls this out in the second chapter with a beautiful verse. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidenam. If you remember, some people talk about this as a wonder. Some people hear this as a wonder. Some people think that, okay, they understood this and this is a wonder. And the wonder of the wonder is nobody understood that. So that's why it's Uttamam Rahasyam. And then this yoga, I'm teaching you the original yoga. That means the Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga Dvayam, or the integrated view of the yoga, is nothing new. It was there in the Vedas and I'm only reinterpreting. So Karma Yoga is not a creation of Lord Krishna. Even I have seen some commentators writing, Karma Yoga is an original contribution of Krishna. Not at all. This was there in the Vedas. I'm only reinterpreting. Then the third thing, let's see. He tells why it is taught to Arjuna. So this teaching that was lost in the passage of the time, it is re-instructed in its original form by the greatest master Krishna. That is point number one. So the original teaching, which was lost during the passage of the time. Remember, we talked about the verbal entropy, means how things get lost. We talked about the game of telephone, when it goes from one person to the other, how things get lost. All these things we talked earlier. So that teaching which was lost during the passage of the time, that is, I'm reinterpreting. And the relationship between the teacher and the taught is highlighted through two words here in this verse. Krishna tells, I'm teaching it to you. Why? Because you are a devotee of mine and you are a friend. These two combinations are very important. Bhakta means it's not that somebody who comes and prostrates to you. Not at all. The definition Shankaracharya used is, there are two one. Anasuyaha, Shraddhavan. So the Bhakta means one who has faith. Faith means what? At least he treats this as a hypothesis. So when Krishna said, just because Krishna said, Arjuna won't reject it. He will initially gives that benefit of doubt, then he try to understand, and he will reject it only if nothing is clicking. So that is the Shraddha here. Then Anasuyaha. Anasuyaha means blind criticism. That is not there. So Arjuna fits into that category. So that is why Krishna took him as a representative to teach the Gita. And through him, the Gita was taught to the entire humanity. Then Sakha. Sakha means if you are just, sometimes the respect, if you have too much respect, you won't ask questions. I still remember in our school days, when these math teachers and our very strict math teachers, do you dare to ask a question? Because you're afraid of what the teacher will think. So that's why immediately the Bhaktaha was added with another meaning. You're a friend. You treat like me as a friend. Right? So Bhartrhari in his definition tells, a friend is somebody who I can talk freely. Even if I don't agree with him, I can tell him. So that freedom is there. So you have the faith. You don't teach this, means you give the benefit of doubt to this teaching. At the very same time, you are free to ask any questions. So this combination is there in you. So you are a Bhakta and a Sakha. So the knowledge transfer or the teaching will be so smooth with you. That is why I'm taking you. Look at the way the commentators goes. This is beautiful. Bhaktosi me Sakha chuti. So therefore, I'm giving you this teaching, which is not easily comprehensible, even though it is available to all. Rahasyam hetaduttamam. That is the essence of this verse. It's not a complicated verse. He's just telling the reason, right? So the original teaching is given to you. It's only a reinterpretation of the original teaching. And I'm teaching it to you because you possess that two qualification for a great learning process. Because the relationship between the teacher and the taught, the healthy relationship, that means the good transfer of information between the teacher and the taught. Because you're a bhakta, at the same time, you're a sakha. And this is teaching is the most supreme secret. The reason is, even though it is given to all, it remains as a secret. That's the essence of this verse. Any questions? Okay, so then we can move. Anu, could you please chant?
Arjuna uvacha aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvataha kathame tatvijaniyam tvamadau proktavaniti.
So this is a classic example. Arjuna, don't go with blind faith. Arjuna uvacha. Arjuna said, aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvataha kathametat vijaniya tomadau proktavaniti. So you cannot fool Arjuna, because he is a sakha and a bhakta. Of course, he didn't say that Krishna was wrong, but something is not reconciling. Something is not reconciling. What is that? Krishna said, I taught this to Sun God in the beginning of the creation. So that means I imparted this knowledge into the intelligent order of the universe at the time of the universe, when the universe got manifested. Now, when Arjuna looks at Krishna, they were contemporaries. How can Mr. Krishna, who might be a couple of years elder to me, can teach this at the beginning of the manifestation of the universe? There is a obvious disconnect. That's what Arjuna is asking. So he is asking, Bhavataha. The word Bhavataha means Bhavan, means your. It's a nice way of addressing somebody, like with respect. So Bhavataha Janmaha, your birth. Aparam. Param means long back. Aparam means not that long back. You are my contemporary. So Bhavataha Janmaha Aparam. Your birth was not that long ago. Vivaswataha Janmaha Param. Whereas the sun god, or the Lord in the form of sun, or the beginning of the universe, was long time back. This is the contradiction. Your birth is very recent. If you take it as Mr. Krishna, he was born to Devaki and Vasudeva, and he might be 1 or 2 years older to Arjuna. That's it. So that's a contradiction. And then he tells, Katham, how? Vijaniya, how am I to know? Iti, that. Tvam, you. Proktavan etam adau. You taught this in the beginning of the universe. See, look at the freedom in our scriptures. Just because that Krishna said it, you don't have to accept it. So you can ask any question. And that's what Arjuna asked. Once again, Bhavataha Janmaha Aparam. Your birth was not so long ago. Vivaswan Janma Param. Whereas the sun was there in the beginning of the manifestation of the universe. So he tells, Katham Vijaniya iti Tvam Proktavan etat adau. So just tell me, how am I to know that you taught this to Lord Sun in the beginning of the creation? There is a misunderstanding, or these two are not reconciling properly. Anachronism is a term used by Swami Chinmayananda to express this. Whatever fits in one period may not be applicable to another. So here what happens? There is a difference or disconnect with the chronology. And that is brilliantly explained by Arjuna. So let's continue that discussion. So Krishna said, I taught this to Lord Sun in the beginning of the creation. For Arjuna, his charioteer Krishna had a definite date of birth because he was his contemporary. So how is it possible that this Krishna taught this to Lord Sun? Or even if you take the scientific language, how is it possible that this original yoga, which the Krishna is teaching to me now, was programmed by Krishna in the intelligent order of the universe? There is an apparent disconnect. How is that possible? So now, so far, Krishna never revealed his identity to any one of us. We all thought that it was Mr. Krishna. So now we are moving into the second topic of this Gita, right? So from 4th verse onwards, Krishna is going to explain who really he is. He is going to present himself as an avatara. So that's the topic we wanted to see. So let's talk. Let's talk to the verse 5. So, Anu, could you chant?
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Bahuni me vyatitani Janmani tava charjuna Tanyaham veda sarvani Natvam vetha parantapa.
Beautiful words. This is the time Krishna starts explaining his true nature. Who is he? What is the difference between him and Arjuna? So these few verses we need to understand properly. Maybe in the next week. See, one tradition, please keep this in mind. In Vedanta, we don't take anything with a blind faith. So we need to understand. We cannot just take an avatara. So we need to understand what is an avatara through a scientific angle, right? So that we do next week. But please pay attention to this topic. This is an important topic, but this is a little bit of tangent because this is not the part of the original teaching. This was just a sidetrack because when Krishna said this was the original teaching, Arjuna got doubt. So he is just revealing his true identity. So this is a slight tangent, but it's an important topic. So he tells, Krishna tells the first sentence, right? Bahuni janmani. So many births have passed for me and you, O Arjuna. So the first point is both Arjuna and Krishna, or all of us, have gone through multiple births. But there is one difference. What is that difference? Aham Vedaha. I know all of them. Tani Sarvani. Aham Vedaha Tani Sarvani. I know all of them. So you and I pass through multiple births. I know all of them. But whereas Tvam na Vedya Parantapaha. But you remember only this birth. That itself shows a difference between Krishna and Arjuna. Arjuna means all of us. All of us, Arjuna is a prototype for all of us. So this verse, Krishna is saying that there are many births. Each one of us has gone through many births, but there is a difference. I am slightly different from you. You don't remember any of your past birth, but I do remember the past birth. So we need to pause here and try to understand reincarnation and incarnation. So what is the theory of reincarnation talks? If you remember in the second chapter, we spent a lot of time. What is reincarnation? If you remember, we spent a lot of time in the second chapter. The whole idea was when you look at yourself and as an entity, you have a physical body, you have a subtle body called soul, And then this is enlivened by the Atma, the consciousness. We spend a lot of time at that point of time. When the physical body is born, right? Or when the physical body is dying, what happens to each of these entities? If you remember, we explained at that point of time, the physical body ceased to exist, right? That was point number one. The subtle body moves to another body. That is what is reincarnation. And what is that determines the new birth? If you remember, we had a large discussion on the karma. So what is that different karma? The Sanchita karma, Agami karma, all those things we talked about that, right? So at the time of death, I take a stock of my karma, Sanchita karma. A subset of the Sanchita karma will be pulled out, and that is going to determine my next birth. And what happens to Atma? Nothing happens to Atma, because Atma is not what is getting transmigrated. So this much we talked about that. This is what happens to everybody. So one thing, why I am born in this particular fashion, it is because of my karma. In other words, I am forced to born, forced to take a birth because of this karma. And my body is determined, my time, place, body, everything is determined by my karma. That is what is happening for any individual. But is that true for Krishna? So let's see. So many births. So if you really look at the traditions, the Vedic and the other karmic traditions here means the Buddhism, the Jainism, and even the Sikhism, all these traditions believe that the subtle body of a living being, it survives the death and comes back to a different body. This is a fundamental belief. And again, this is a matter of faith and belief, and it cannot be proved or disproved through scientific means. We talked about this earlier extensively. We said that even thousands of examples you can quote, but that may not be the replacement for the actual proof. And there is no way to prove, or there is no way to disprove this theory. Now, second point is, so you may ask me, okay, you talk about the dharmic tradition. What about the other traditions? The Islamic tradition or a Christianity tradition, the Abrahamic tradition, what do they say? Can anybody tell me that, do they believe in the survival of some entity after the death?
No.
Absolutely, they do. They do. They don't believe in a reincarnation, but they believe that the soul will survive. And what is the day of judgment, if you understand correctly? The soul will be resurrected and given a body, and a judgment will be given. What does that mean? The soul survives the death. So they are not believing in a reincarnation like we do. So per their theory, what happens? When somebody dies, the soul will be kept in a suspended animated state till the day of judgment. And on the day of judgment, what is going to happen is the soul will be given a body and a judgment is given. So this is what the Christianity, the Abrahamic tradition talks. But one thing is clear. Every religion in the world, every religion in the world believes that some entity is going to survive the death. That's for sure.
Otherwise, all religions will crumble, basically.
Exactly. There is no existence for any religion if this belief is questioned. So some people say that, okay, the reincarnation is not scientific. What is the alternate you have? The soul goes to a suspended animation. Can you prove it? Can you disprove it? So This is very important. Some people make criticism without understanding what they talk about this. All the religion in the world, to Vijay's point, if this theory is wrong, there is no validity for any of the religions in the world. That's for sure. Now, so let's understand this a little bit more. So what the reincarnation theory tells is each one of us has gone through multiple births. We may not be able to remember the past life due to the limitation of the body and the mind. Only Ishvara, only an incarnation of the God can recollect all the past manifestations of himself and others. This is a fundamental belief of karma. And again, as I said, let me underline the point. This is a matter of belief. It's up to you to believe it, or you don't have to believe it. It's fine. For you to attain the self-realization, this is not a mandatory belief, but this is a core principle on which the Vedic system built up. So Krishna is telling Arjuna that there was a many birth for you and me, but I remember that because my birth is a little bit special. Your birth means you don't remember that. So we are going to see why the Krishna's birth is slightly different than the other's birth. But let's spend a little bit more time on this reincarnation. So a few thoughts on reincarnation, right? Sentient beings comes to this present life from the previous life and take birth again and again. This is the fundamental belief of reincarnation. As I said, although many religions accept the survival of the soul, they may differ from their being, means views on what exactly getting reborn. For example, one fundamental difference between Abrahamic tradition and the Vedic tradition is that Abrahamic traditions believe that the mind is part of the soul. They don't consider the mind as matter. Whereas the Vedic tradition believes that it is matter. So like that, there is subtle differences. Every religious tradition has differences. And means when it is get born, how it is born, what exactly being passed from one life to the other, there is a lot of differences. Some religious traditions believe the prospectus of a future life, but they reject the past life. For example, Christianity. They don't believe that you had a past life. They believe that you came into being in this particular birth, but your soul will survive. Got the difference, right? That's a difference. But the Vedic tradition believes that you come, this means this is a birth and death cycle. So this is a very high level overview. So 2 points to keep in mind. Every religion in the world believes that something will survive the death. What exactly is the entity that survives? There is difference. Some religious traditions do not believe in the past birth, like they say that this is your first birth, but they believe that something will continue, especially the Abrahamic traditions. But the Vedic tradition believes that you have a death and a birth. So this is just a quick overview. So now, some few more thoughts, some logical arguments to support, right? If you really look at the mathematics or logic, things preceded by things of a similar type. For example, why did somebody develop an interest in music in this particular lifetime? If this is your first birth, and if it is a random selection by God, why certain people were given a lot of intelligence? There is no explanation. So there are 4 points. I just took this from the logics. So one is things preceded by things of a similar type. This is a basic logic thing. Things preceded by a substantial cause. Without a cause, for example, suppose somebody is a master in music. The cause is what? He might have practiced or he might have developed multiple times. Why somebody is born as a spiritual master? prodigies, all these things. And also the mind means the familiarity. For example, the skills you develop. Naturally, it is natural to think that, okay, this mind was trained in the past. So this logical sequencing is a particularly, it's a logic to believe. Again, as I said, this is not the replacement for a scientific evidence. And so far, and I don't think we will find anything concrete in science which shows that something gets reincarnated. But only way to look at this is, if you don't accept reincarnation, right, you have to accept that the world and all the inhabitants, they came without very randomly. Vijay is Vijay because it's random. Rajesh is Rajesh because it is very random. So if you really look at the order of the universe, you can see that that order is there everywhere. And this particular idea doesn't make much sense. So you cannot prove it, but you can assimilate, or at least there is some logic in this. The best way to think about reincarnation is, if this reincarnation is not there, how do you explain these things? So when we studied the chapter 8 of the Gita, we talked about what is a belief, right? And when do you take a belief seriously? So belief, by definition, is an assumption subjected to correction upon verification. Isn't it? If you're 100% certain, is that a belief or is that a fact? Think through that.
It's a fact.
Yeah. So belief means it is subjected to correction upon verification. Now, the problem is that, what is the problem here? Some of these beliefs are verifiable, but some of these beliefs are non-verifiable. That I survived the death, how do you verify it? That I go to heaven, how do you verify it? By believing exclusively on a particular savior, how do you go to heaven? Even if you go to heaven, I'm going to enjoy that heaven. How do you verify it? So there are certain beliefs which are verifiable, and there are certain beliefs which are non-verifiable. Now the question is, if some beliefs are non-verifiable, how do I take a belief? The answer is simple. Shankaracharya tells, this is where the brilliance of Shankara comes in. He tells, if a belief is non-verifiable, take or accept that belief if that is helpful to you. Underline, if a belief is non-verifiable, take that belief only if that belief is helpful to you. Now, the belief of reincarnation, the belief of karma, is that a helpful belief? 100%, because it gives me an opportunity to live good. It gives me at least an explanation of why I am what I am. Because if you say that, okay, it is God's wish, it is because of God's wish I should be like this, that's not fair. That leaves a lot of frustration. So the belief of reincarnation, it's a helpful belief. It gives responsibility to me. At the very same time, it gives me an opportunity to change my course of future. So that's why it's a helpful belief. So we can take it. That's how Shankara answers it. Very interesting. So now let's continue. This is a side topic, but we will continue this topic. So the next topic is What science talk about this? So there are a lot of researches happening, right? So there is a scientist called Ian Stevenson. Actually, he is from University of Virginia. He has done his whole life is spent, means the first person on the top. His entire life is spent on the reincarnation study. He went through hundreds of cases and published around 300 papers and 14 books on reincarnation. So many examples. Another person is Dr. Jim Tucker, actually again from the University of Virginia. Seems they specialize in this particular topic. So he studied around 2,500 cases of children who has these past life memories. And he wrote a book. I read that book. That book is very interesting. That book is Return to Life, this book. So now there is a question, right? So I may differ with some of the Vedantic teachers here. So if you really strictly look at Vedanta, the Vedanta tells that where exactly is your memory belongs to. It's part of your physical body, and the physical body won't survive. So you may not get the memories transferred. But again, I take my pardon. So I'm just going against that view. But what I feel is that, yes, your brain cell may not survive, but the stored data can always transmigrate. It's like, I don't know whether you tried to change your iPhone recently, right? How do you do that? You bring the other iPhone, the vicinity of the previous iPhone, you can see that the data and the configuration and all the settings got transferred. None of the hardware got transferred, but the subtle matter, which is the data, got transferred. So I personally believe that theoretically it is possible to transfer even the memory, but why don't we remember the memory if that is the case? Come on. Somebody was talking to me, even the last class content, they are not remembering. So how they are going to remember the past life? It's impossible. It's pretty much impossible to remember the content of the past. So that's one side observation. So this recollection, the recollection of this reincarnation is an interesting subject, because most of the people forget their past lives when they go through the process of death and the intermediate state and the rebirth. So normally the human beings cannot retrieve these facts, but there are exceptions. There are exceptions. You can see that in this book, The Return to Life. So that's just an observation. So even though Krishna tells the human being may not be able to recollect, this is the reason. But an avatara, the incarnation of the God. Incarnation means something coming to a flesh. That is the literal meaning of the word incarnation. So an incarnation of the God will be able to recall all the past lives. So Krishna is saying that you are born because of your karma, but I am born at my will because I am an avatara. So I am able to recollect it. And that is why I am able to tell that this knowledge I taught was in the ancient past and you are not able to remember. Any questions? We took a little bit tangent. So if I recap correctly, the whole verse means that everybody has multiple births. And that birth is happening because of the karma for a normal human being. But an incarnation of God is a special type of incarnation. They will be able to recall the past. And that is why Krishna is saying that I am able to recall the past. And to build this topic, we said this reincarnation theory, something that survives death is common to all religion. All the religions will cease to exist if you dispute that idea. So no religious person can say that I don't believe the survival of an entity post-death. Then the religion is gone. What exactly is the entity that survives? How it survives, where it goes, how it goes, it varies from religious tradition to tradition. But all the Eastern religions, all the dharmic religions has a common point of view that the soul will take another birth. By the way, the soul is not Atma, right? We know that. Soul means it is subtle body. Any questions? This is an interesting topic, so we can pause here and just take one question here, one or two questions. And then we can...
Just a comment, Rajesh. I just like to share an anecdote. Anyway, Krishna is going to explain why we don't remember in the next words. But so there was actually in New Jersey, there was one guy actually who used to work for Sandoz Pharmaceuticals in North Brunswick. And by the time I met one of my colleagues, actually, he already moved back to India. He is actually one of the guys actually who remembered his past birth. He was actually Indian, just like many of us who studied here in India until masters and then came here on H1 visa. They were working, and he remembered many things actually in his past life in US here.
Right.
And he visited that home. He recognized there some of the people still, old people still living, and he wrote a book called Beech Tree. So unfortunately, I was so curious to meet him, but by the time I learned this story, he already moved back to India.
Oh, what is the book name, Vijay?
Beech Tree.
Beech Tree. Okay.
Yeah, that's where he was hanged by these white people. He was a black guy at the time, and he was hanged to that beech tree by these white people, some of the kids. Yeah.
Yeah. And the book I quoted also has a lot of interesting stories. Return to Life. That's written by a scientist, not by a normal person. So this is very interesting topic.
Rajesh, I too have a question.
Yeah.
So in our Hindu culture, I mean, like with Vedantic or meditation, we can go back to in the past life and understand like what was our like past life or previous many more lives actually. Is that not true, Rajesh?
It is not 100% true. Krishna tells you won't remember that. Why do you don't remember? We are going to see that a little bit later. So you need some normal human being. It is not possible because your memory is pretty much connected with your body, and it's not necessary that it will be transferred to the other birth because the samskaras will continue. But the general Vedantic belief is that I'm talking only from the Advaita Vedanta tradition, right? The broader Hindu spectrum means you have the Tantra, you have all these other schools. They may have different belief systems and way, but the Advaita Vedanta doesn't call that out very specifically. And very specifically, Krishna tells, you don't remember your past birth, and I do remember. The reason Krishna tells is the fact that your memory is pretty much connected with your physical body, and when you transmigrate, conventionally not all those memories will be moved from one life to the other.
Yeah, but Rajesh, as you said, you may not remember, your memory is not transmigrating, but your sanskara definitely.
Definitely, 100%. And that is pretty much evident in the life.
I think that
you can see even in your own family, right? A brother and a sister, your own family, you may think your sister or a brother may not have any connection, any interest in the Gita, but you are full-time reading this. Why?
Yeah.
The
tools. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Vijayji. I was just trying to understand like what is the source for that? I mean, like, is that not a sort of memory which basically coming from your past life?
No, it's your conditioning, right? So there are two things. One is like the actual data, your memory bank. The other one is what? Your internal programming, because it is called your samskaras. Definitely the samskaras will be transmigrated, but not all memory. But the exceptions are, I personally believe that some memories can get transmigrated. That's why, because the beach story which I said, he was able to recollect it because in the process of transmigration, some memory would have transmitted. Return to life is not possible without transmigrating some memory, but not the entire memory will be transmigrated.
I think the tools. The tools we
Advaita
have
Vedanta.
right now, the tools we have to probe that question are insufficient.
Yeah. But my question is, why do you need to know the past? One life itself is more than enough for us to worry.
No, because Rajeshji, I was like asking, like in your current life, as you correctly said, that like my brother or my sister, or even for myself, I may have an interest in particular field, or I may be scared of something which like always makes me scared, like for the whole life.
Yeah.
So if I want to know the root cause of why this happens to me, I may have to go to the past life, right, to understand.
I know regression therapy is there. People talk about that, but how much it is scientifically proven, nobody knows. I don't want to make a false claim that you can go back to your past life, right? So there are so many people who does that type of your past life analysis, etc. It means I'm not saying that it is wrong, but there is not enough evidences, as Vijay said. There is not enough scientific evidences by which you can say that this is exactly is your past life.
There is an institute in Hyderabad. Actually, they produced 8 episodes, I guess, and they telecast on TV on Gata Janma Rahasyam. That's the program name was in Telugu. So this guy is an expert, and he take the people into transmigration, and they could recollect in past lives, basically.
Right.
Yeah, the vasana that Rohitji was saying. So they had some issues in this particular life. For example, they're terrified of water, for example. So he chose that kind of people selected, and why that is the case. So he took them back into the previous life, and that's how they figured out what was the reason.
Yeah. So Sanjay ji, it's not impossible that some memory would have came in, but definitely it would be lying in the deep unconscious. So you may have to dig that up. But again, that is not the focus of Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta means you want to separate from all these things. So this is just a very, very, as I said, like this is a tangent. So let's keep that way and move.
Thank you.
I know, we can discuss like 9:30. If you have more time, we can definitely discuss. Let's go to the next verse 6.
Ajopi sannapyayatma bhutanamishvaropi san prakritim swamadhisthaya sambhavamyatma mayaya.
So in this verse, Krishna clearly tells that who is he and what is the nature of the avatara. In the previous verse, he just introduced it, right? You may have many birth, you have many, not may, you have many birth, I have many birth. I remember, you don't remember. That's what he said. In this verse, he is going to elaborate upon that. So he tells api. Api means even though. San means being. Ajaha. Ajaha means what? Not born. So even though my nature, I was never born as absolute reality, I was never born. Avyayatma. Avyayatma means imperishable being. See, he's talking as the Lord of the universe, the absolute reality, the Brahman. So I do not have any birth. I do not have any decay. Even though what happens? Apisan means even though. Ishwaropi san. Even though I am the Lord of the entire universe. Bhutanam Ishwaropi san. I am the Lord of all the living beings. Look at how Krishna introduces himself. I am the Lord of all the living beings. Still, he tells, right? Adhishtaya swatma prakritim. So he said, I control my own nature and sambhavami. Sambhavami means it's a brilliant word. As though come into the being. With Atma Maya, with my own creative power, I appear in the universe. So even though I am unborn, without any decay, I am the Lord of the entire universe. Using my own creative potential, I come to this world, appears to be in this world for some time with my own creative potential. My God, this is too big. We need to elaborate, means we'll start and see this, but we will need to continue this a little bit more in the next week. So first of all, let me point out the contradictions. This is how Shankaracharya starts. There is an obvious contradiction. First word what he tells? Ajaha. Right? Ajaha means what? I'm not born. And then he tells what? Sambhavami. I am born. Right? In one sentence he tells I born, means I am unborn. And then he tells I born with my creative potential. How is that possible? So the first quarter of the sentence, he tells, I am the absolute reality, Brahman, from which the whole universe emerges out. The whole universe exists. The whole universe merges back. I am Avyaya. Avyaya means, Vyaya means decay. I am imperishable. The world may come and go. The human beings may come and go. The sun may come and go. The stars may come and go. But nothing will happen to me. There won't be any change in me. So I am Ajaha. I am Avyayaha. Bhutanam Ishwaran. I am the Lord of the universe. I am the governing body of the universe. I am the intelligent order of the universe. I am the controller of the universe. I enforce all laws into the universe. Intelligent order of the universe. The total body, total mind, total everything. So one side, I am the absolute reality. On the other side, I am the total controller of the universe. Even though I am like that, using my own will, sometimes what happens? Sambhavami. Sambhavami is a beautiful word. It tells I as though come into the being, into the universe. See, when you look at the universe of ours, it has a definite beginning and it will have an end. And it manifests for some time. And the Ishvara is beyond that. Right? That is why he is Ishvara. Before the manifestation of the universe, Ishvara was there. After the resolution of the universe or dissolution of the universe, Ishvara is going to be there. And the universe exists in Ishvara. But what Ishvara is saying is that at times, out of my own will, using my own creative potential, I also come into the universe, being part of the universe. A simple example will make this point very clear. Shankaracharya goes back to his favorite example, Swapna Drishtanta. So imagine the entity that is outside of the dream. When you dream, that dream world was created at a particular period of time. When? At the beginning of the dream, correct? And the dream world exists where? In me, isn't it? Think through that. The dream world exists in me. And finally, the dream world will merge back into me. And now, if I have the skill, I can also be a character in that dream. So that character in the dream got manifested when the dream world got manifested. And that character will play a role in that dream. And finally, when the dream goes back, what happens to that character? That character will merge to the original me. So if you think like that, This is Ishvara's role. So please don't say that the world is Ishvara's dream. That's not what I meant. Drishtanta is a Drishtanta. It's only an example, to convey a message. So the whole idea here is that Ishvara, at his will, he can come into this world, which belongs to a different order of the reality. So for this, we need to understand that the Ishvara has two different orders of reality, right? One is called the transcendental. The other one is called, anybody remembering that? We had long discussions on this topic earlier.
Imminent.
Imminent, exactly. So that's the point. So this dream world, which enjoys a reality during the dream, the manifestation of me in that dream world can be considered as an avatara of mine in that dream. Like that, the Ishvara, out of his will, he comes to this world and play a role and goes back. This is the idea of the avatara. Whereas, let's stop here, but we'll continue this topic. This is a very interesting topic which we need to understand in detail. How you and I come to this world. Think through that for a second. We talked about that because of our karma. Ishvara comes into this world out of his will. That is the difference between reincarnation and an incarnation. I born to this particular universe because of my karma. I got this body because of my karma, right? My time of birth and the parents were chosen because of my karma. And this karma and the playground is given to me because of my karma. Of course, how do I play in that playground is my free will. See, this is a beautiful example of understanding the karma, right? The difficulty of the game and the opponents, everything is given to me by my karma, but I still have a chance to play. So that is my will. But everything else is determined by my karma. The body is given by my karma. The skills are determined by my karma. Of course, I have certain things I can do because of my free will, not the full free will, but at least based on my freedom, I can do something. What I do based upon the circumstances, that is the thing I need to learn. But everything is given by my karma. Whereas Ishvara, when he comes to this world, he chooses the place. He chooses the body. He chooses the time. And he is not bound by karma. He comes here for a purpose. What is that purpose? We will see in the verse 7. Yada yada hi dharmasya. The famous words of the Gita. But one difference I wanted to highlight. The jivas, their birth is determined by their karma. Everything is controlled by the karma. Whereas Ishvara, he comes down from his position as the ruler of the universe. He comes down to our level. That is why it is known as avatara. Avatara literally means coming down. And he plays a role, he goes back. We are going to elaborate on this topic in detail next week. We'll continue to discuss this topic. There are few interesting points we need to see here. Like what is an avatara, what is the difference between karma and avatara, all those points we will see. And then we will go from there. So today we saw, in fact, 4 verses. The last verse we saw only partially. So the third verse we saw that whatever Krishna taught is only an intelligent reinterpretation of the original teaching. And then Krishna said, Arjuna had a question. How is it possible that you can teach sun god because you are contemporary to me? Krishna said, no. You had many birth. I had many birth. But being an avatara, I remember. Being a reincarnation, you don't remember. And then he said, Even though I am the Lord of the universe, out of my own will, not with the karma, I come to this world. And this is the nature of the avatar. So that's what we saw today. And I think now let's open up for Q&A for the 15 minutes.